I didn't just want to make a video about anxiety. I wanted to create a new awareness around this topic of anxiety and fear, or to deepen the awareness that we already have, because I think this is what is needed. So as usual, I'm going to make this simple, impactful and delightful so that you can remember it and apply it in your daily life. I'm Aliki, that's Greek for Alice if you're wondering, and welcome back to all my wonderful subscribers. I'm actually planning something special for you, which I will reveal shortly. And if it's your first time here, welcome! I'm so glad you found me. There's a lot of information out there about anxiety and fear, how to deal with it, how to avoid it, how to eradicate it. We're not going to be doing that stuff. We want to do something a little different here. Let's start by simplifying everything. We want to look at 3 stages of your relationship with anxiety. The first stage is not being aware of your true spiritual nature, and therefore having a very unhealthy relationship with anxiety. It's not being aware of how your human experience works, what's actually going on, so you get caught in the grip of it. You think an anxious thought and you feel it in your body, you tense up, you experience anxiety. And then that can snowball into labeling yourself as an anxious person, and then going through life and seeing everything through an anxious thinking lens. So even when something isn't anxiety causing and provoking at all, normally, you would see it in a very anxious way. The second step is the most wonderful step of becoming aware. So this is where you're having a shift in your perspective and you're starting to see things differently, and your relationship with anxiety and fear is changing. You start questioning these thoughts and reactions that you've always had, and you start to realize, wait a minute, there's something going on here that I've been missing, right? This is where you're becoming aware. You're becoming aware of a deeper part of you from which you're able to observe what is going on. You still can't help reacting to things, but you're really beginning to make a little shift in your awareness there. And then the final stage is awareness. It's to be aware of your true spiritual nature and aware of what's going on in your human experience. So that doesn't mean that you don't get anxious or fearful anymore, but your experience changes completely, because now when anxiety and fear appear, you realize where they're coming from. So then that fear and anxiety dissolve much faster, and you're not caught in the grip of it habitually, which means you don't have to go through life in a fearful way, in a fearful and anxious way, anticipating panic attacks all the time and just suffering through life. In all of today's 3 videos, I want you to consider these 3 stages, right? Stage 1, not being aware and reacting to everything that's happening. Stage 2, becoming aware and still in reactive mode, but starting to have a perspective shift and some realizations around what's going on. And stage 3, which is this wonderful stage of simply being aware of what's going on, being aware of yourself in relation to what's going on, and ultimately responding to what's happening rather than reacting to it, and being in this beautiful state of living in the awareness of your true nature, which is what these videos are all about.
Have you noticed that you go through life thinking that you're seeing everything as it really is? As though you're looking through the lens of a camera, taking pictures or footage of reality. But the truth is, you're actually creating your own painting, using thought to paint pictures of reality. Sometimes your thoughts can create a dark picture of the way things are. So it's important to remember that what you're seeing isn't the way things really are. Rather, it's the way you're seeing them through your thoughts, beliefs, concepts and ideas. Remember that you are the artist painting that picture, and it can change at any moment with a change of thought. Your reality is never fixed. It's being created moment by moment. You are the artist. You are the painter of life. Dr. Dicken said, "We're artists, and we use thought to paint pictures of reality." We question reality because we stop seeing it as a given, and we start seeing that it's created. It's very freeing to know we have the capacity to paint new and fresh.
This video is very important. It's a good introductory video to this topic, because if we truly believe that we are like a camera and we're always seeing life the way it actually is, if we believe that our view is real, then we're very much stuck in the first stage, the stage of not being aware of our human experience, not being aware of how anxiety and fear work, not being aware of ourselves and our true spiritual nature, And this is really the crux of all our problems, is if we don't know ourselves in this deeper way, if we don't come to know our deepest, truest spiritual part, our spirit, then we go through life like an anchorless boat. We're drifting at sea. We're lost. We're lost in our human experience, at the mercy of all our thought storms, at the mercy of all our life events and what's happening, which are out of our control, let's face it. So it's so important to see that actually it's not a fixed reality. There's no how things are. There's how we perceive things to be. We're not looking at life through the lens of a camera, but we're actually painting pictures of reality with our thoughts. You're actually an artist, a painter of life. Isn't that amazing? We get to create a more beautiful picture of life. Whatever you've been experiencing up until now, it doesn't mean that you're destined to experience that for the rest of your life. Heavens no! That would be totally depressing and untrue. Don't believe that thought. Please don't ever believe the thought that the rest of your life is going to be like it has been up until now. We are creative beings. We paint pictures of reality with our thoughts. We are painters of life. This morning, when you woke up, from the minute you woke up, You've been painting a picture of your reality. You've been creating this internal world of yours, how you see things through your mind. I remember the first time I heard the phrase, "You're one thought away from a different feeling," and I thought, wow, that blew my mind completely when I heard that, because it's so true, right? You think an anxious thought, you feel anxious. You think a happy thought, you feel happy. You think a sad thought, guess what? That's how it works. Thought is an incredibly creative power that we have been misusing and misunderstanding. We can use thought to create a much better, a much more pleasant reality, a much more pleasant world in our mind. But be careful, don't fall into the trap of forcing yourself to think positive thoughts. It's not about that. We don't want to force anything, quite the opposite. We want to relax everything and get back to who we really are. We want to relax everything and get back to that place of awareness, of peace, of clarity, wisdom, and love. Ultimately, that's what we want to get back to. The love that we are, the love that you are. Having anxious and fearful thoughts doesn't mean that you're separate from the love that you are. It doesn't mean that you're separate from the peace that you are. And it doesn't mean that you're separate from the joy that you are. Now, your mind will tell you something very different, but you don't have to listen to it. You don't have to believe it. You don't have to pay so much attention to it. We don't want to be ignorant anymore, do we? No, we want to understand what's going on in our human experience. We want to understand how we work. We want the user's manual. That's what we want. Yes, the user's manual. How I work. Your entire reality can change through awareness.
Excessive thought activity often creates scenarios of things that are going wrong that are not happening now, will probably never happen, and even if they did happen, the actual situation would be easier to face than the imaginary situation in your mind. Because there's nothing you can do, there's no action you can take to remedy an imaginary situation. But if an actual situation arises, you face it, you give it your attention, and you take the action that you need to take. With an imaginary situation, you're totally at the mercy of it because it only exists in your mind. My body cannot tell the difference between an actual event that's happening outside and what my mind is producing. The body doesn't know the difference, that the tiger isn't in the room. The threatening presence is your thoughts. The body reacts in the same way, whether there's an actual threat in the room or in your thoughts. You can have shortness of breath because you're thinking fearful thoughts. I had that for years. Nothing is happening. Absolutely nothing. There's a quiet room. Nothing. It's all happening in the mind. So if that's the case, then you need to tackle the thoughts because they will cause the fear. And how do you tackle thoughts? By realizing the futility and destructive nature of the thoughts and choosing to step out. And what do you do to step out? Don't believe your mind that tells you No, you can't step out. You have to continue thinking. No, you step out and take a conscious breath. You make a conscious choice to remove attention from the thinking.
So here we're looking at imagination versus reality. If you're creating these stressful scenarios in your mind day after day, it's really going to wear you down, as you know, because you're not dealing with reality. You're dealing with an imagined threat. Now, it may be something that's happened in the past, but what's happened has happened. It's the worry and the anxiety of what might happen. It's basically a thought about an imagined future. You can't really deal with that. How can you deal with that? It's all in the imagination. You can end up in this vicious downward spiral of thinking these negative, repetitive, anxious, fearful thoughts over and over and over and over again. And it seems like a hopeless situation. Your body can't tell the difference between an event that's actually happening and a thought that your mind is producing. This is a huge point, because now we can wake up to what we're doing to ourselves, right? If I'm imagining the worst case scenario all the time, what am I doing to myself? I'm experiencing so much stress, habitual stress, that I have to go on medication just to balance the levels in my body so I can feel normal, somewhat normal, right? This is what's happening. Chronic stress, chronic anxiety. We can go from not being aware of what we're doing to ourselves to becoming aware of what we're doing to ourselves. If you're thinking about something that isn't actually happening in this moment, right now, in reality, right now, in front of you, if it's not happening, do you need to create that? This anxious, fearful thinking is creating this very physical experience inside you. And yet, Eckhart points out, I love that bit where he says, nothing's happening. Nothing's happening. You're in a quiet room. There's no tiger in the room. I'm in a peaceful park. Now in here, I could be in hell, right? And I would miss all this because I would be caught up in the world of my mind, caught up in the anxious picture that I've created with my thoughts, innocently. There's a part of you that knows that this isn't real. It's not as real as it appears to be. There's a part of you that knows that my mind is creating this. This realization will change the rest of your life. It will. Start trusting yourself. Start trusting what you can see with your spiritual eyes. This is very important. Give yourself some credit for being able to understand the deeper dimension of what's going on here. So even though you're caught up in it, you see that you're caught up in it. This is the key. Now you're looking from awareness. Now things can begin to change. Now you're painting a different picture. You're adding a bit of brighter color on there. You're adding a bit of sunshine. Because even though you may be caught up in it, you see that you're caught up in it. And that's massive. You can celebrate that. You can have a party about that. Because the worst thing is to be caught in it and not to realize that you're caught in it. You're just one with it. You're one. You're one with the thought storm. But what you're seeing here, going from stage 1 to stage 3, is the vastness of your being, that you are actually the sky in which everything is happening. You're the space in which your anxiety and fear are taking place. This is a very different perspective, because now it means that we don't have to be afraid of our fear, and we don't have to be anxious about our anxiety anymore.
If people don't have any understanding that it's just thought, it will feed on itself. Anyone who has ever had an anxiety attack can relate to the fact that if you don't know it's just thought, you start to have an anxious feeling. And all of a sudden, that anxious feeling triggers the thought, oh no, I'm having an anxious feeling. So the thinking starts domino affecting on itself, like a snowball gathering snow very quickly going downhill. It's more of a fear of the experience of anxiety than anything else. It's the fear of the thinking itself, or the fear of the fear itself, that leads to an extremely unpleasant freak-out experience. When people understand that they had a fearful thought, they have a recognition. Okay, that was just an anxious thought that came into my head in this moment. I had a momentary experience of getting a wave of anxiety or a pang of anxious thought, and suddenly, instead of going, I don't like that, and trying to run from it, I went, yeah, I guess that's just a thought like any other thought, isn't it? It was like the person underneath the costume had been revealed. I realized that, oh, it was just my friend Joe in a monster costume. It's not actually a real monster. All of a sudden, I saw underneath it was just this flimsy little average normal thing called a thought, and it was just like any other thought. What I realized is that all thought is just energy, and no thinking is more or less real or more or less scary. We just have reactions. We decide, I don't like this thought, so we freak out and we run from it, and it gives it this huge life that it doesn't actually really have. Anxiety for me was just a pattern of nervous thinking that I got stuck in and got afraid of. Once I saw it for what it was, it didn't have a life of its own anymore. So now I'll have a wave of anxious thinking, just like I have a wave of any other kind of thinking, but it's not a pattern existing in my life anymore.
So up until now, anxiety and fear have been the enemy, and we don't like them, we want to get rid of them. A big, dark, scary monster of an enemy. But Mara discovered that actually it's just her friend Joe in a monster costume. It's not a tiger, it's a pussycat. Of course, it can remain big and scary if we keep giving it that power by believing it's real and by fueling it with more attention and more belief. Then it can get incredibly scary. This is where we want to realize that we've been catastrophizing anxiety and fear. We've been making them into this thing that we don't want to touch. We don't even want to look at it. Just take it away. But actually, it's very normal to feel fear and anxiety sometimes in your life because, spoiler alert, we're human, and being human means that we get to experience the whole spectrum of emotions. That's right. We get to be up here, and we get to be down here, and we get to be everything in between. We need to have a shift from seeing fear and anxiety as the enemy. If we see it as the enemy, we're going to treat it as the enemy, and we're going to push it away, we're going to run away from it, we're going to try and kill it, we're going to do all these things that don't work and only make it worse. What we need is to have a different view. We need to change our relationship with anxiety, with fear. It doesn't have to be this scary thing that you can't deal with anymore. It can just be something that happens. Someone said to me on here, leave the bells, don't edit out the bells. So here are the bells for you. Special request. So remember the 3 simple stages of your anxiety journey, going from not being aware and reacting to everything to starting to shift your perspective to the stage of awareness and responding to life rather than reacting to everything. Still experiencing some anxiety and fear at times, but not suffering from it anymore, and being in that empowered position of seeing, understanding what's going on and seeing how it all works. Basically, getting to know the user's manual. Thank you to all of you who have reached out to me. I love connecting with you, and to all of you who have taken the time to watch my videos, comment on them and share them. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.